Kristalina Georgieva warned in a blog post that funds forecasts for global growth are set to fall. She cited the war in Ukraine as well as inflation. Maurice Obstfeld, he was in fact the chief economist at the IMF. He's now a professor at UC Berkeley, and he joins me from California. It is really good to see you again on a day when certainly the market moves are confusing when they see an inflation report like this. When you looked at it, what did you see? Did you see inflation that could have peaked or is at least peaking?
Well, we don't really know. Core inflation on a month-to-month basis rose a little bit. On a year-to-year basis, it's been steady around 6%. And the headline inflation number is truly scary. Month-to-month inflation was 1.3%, which is even higher than in March, the month after the war started. And that translates to a 16.8% annual rate of price level increase. So I think the Fed is very worried about this, and 75 basis points for this month is a done deal. Maybe even 100 is on the table. If you look around the world, the Bank of Canada just today did a 100 basis point increase. The Reserve Bank of Australia just did two 50 basis point back-to-back increases. And those are both countries where inflation is substantially lower than it is in this latest print.
It is, in fact, and the data that they're seeing must not be comforting, which is why, as you said, it was a surprise for the Bank of Canada to go to 100 basis points. I want to ask you, though, that over 16%, when you annualize that monthly figure, is, as you said, scary. It's startling. The other thing that I saw was rent, only up, let's say, 5.5%. But to me, that seems like it still has to settle through the system, meaning that inflationary indicator could yet go higher. And more to the point as well, what we're seeing with wages. Do you think then that there could be more trouble for inflation down the road? Because when it comes to rents, the cost of housing, or wages, it is very difficult to pull those downward, isn't it?
The rental numbers are indeed very significant and are one of the big drivers of this number, along with food and especially gasoline. The thing about rent is it's part of core inflation. It's a huge fraction of a lot of people's spending, and so it bulks very large in the CPI, and there's a lot of momentum there. So this is hurting a lot of people. It's hurting their ability to spend on other goods, and all in all, these price increases, even though the Fed will have to tighten to counteract them, will have to tighten even more to counteract them, themselves give a deflationary effect to spending on other goods in the economy. So that's very worrisome as this tightening cycle proceeds.
And I do want to get to the other side of the picture here. When we look at commodities, people have already started to talk about, demand destruction and that they're coming down. But are those sustained? And I do point to some things. We still have the war going on between Ukraine and Russia. But if you couple that with the strong jobs report that we just had, plus COVID, still apparently a huge issue in China, do you worry that naturally we could be in for darker days ahead, not the slow, shallow recession around the world that some people are predicting?
Well, I think there is a worry that central banks, having been wrong-footed by and large to greater or lesser extents, may be a little bit in panic mode and may go a little bit too far. Like if you look at the joint global effect of all these rate increases, it could be very contractionary. And we saw something similar to this in the early 1980s recession. In fact, as far as China goes, they seem to be rolling out a pretty substantial stimulus. I mean, they, in common with a number of East Asian countries, haven't seen quite the inflation pressures that we've seen in the West. So that could have something of a mitigating effect on the global response. But moving forward, I think the picture is really grim. And so it's not surprising that the IMF's managing director made the prediction she did.
Yeah, as you said, a grim picture, and unfortunately, with the forces at work, we have no idea to predict. And Fed clearly has got to be worried about the inflation numbers they can predict ongoing. Thanks so much for joining us and weighing in once again. Appreciate it.